Sweeping legislation now signed into law. Ahead on Face the State, the new law creating controversy in the classroom as another carries bipartisan support aimed at protecting Ohio children. We're sitting down with Ohio House Minority Leader Allison Russo. Coming up, she's weighing in on some of the big issues that just became law and her focus for the year ahead. Plus, Vice President-elect JD Vance resigned from his Senate seat as he prepares to take his new office. Now, time is ticking for Governor DeWine to appoint Vance's Senate replacement. A look at who could become Ohio's next senator as the governor remains tight-lipped on who he'll tap.
I'm not ready to make an announcement yet, but the announcement will be coming soon.
Face the State starts right now. Vice President-elect JD Vance resigned from his U.S. Senate seat at midnight Friday morning as he prepares to take his new office. Vance sent his resignation letter to Ohio Governor Mike DeWine Thursday, announcing his plan to step down. In the letter, Vance said it has been a tremendous honor and privilege to serve the people of Ohio in the Senate over the past 2 years. Welcome to Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. Vance will be sworn into office as vice president in just 8 days. With Vance's resignation, it's now up to Governor DeWine to appoint his replacement. The governor has been holding his cards very close to the vest on this. And as of the taping of this show, the governor had not announced a decision. In a statement, Vice President-elect Vance said, quote, "When I was elected to this office, I promised to never forget where I came from, and I've made sure to live by that promise every single day. The American people have granted President Trump an undeniable mandate to put America first, both at home and abroad. Over the next 4 years, I will do all that I can to help President Trump enact his agenda. Together, we will make America stronger, safer, and more prosperous than ever before," end quote. Governor DeWine had said he would wait for Vance to resign from the Senate before announcing who he is appointing to replace him. Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted has been considering a run for governor in 2026, and his team told me just last month that he would announce his plans on that early this year. But now the lieutenant governor has emerged as a possible frontrunner for the Senate appointment. DeWine and Husted did not tip their hands when asked about it.
I'm not ready to make an announcement yet, but the announcement will be coming soon.
We're considering all of the options, and it's really all I have to say.
They also were asked about a recent trip to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President-elect Trump. Both only joked that the weather was good and it's a lovely place. Governor DeWine also said he is not waiting to hear anything from Trump before making his decision on whom to appoint to the Senate. Now, once Governor DeWine appoints his choice for Senate, the replacement would serve in that seat until a special election in 2026. The winning candidate in that election will then take office in December of 2026. The winner does not automatically win a regular 6-year Senate term. They would have to run again in 2028, which is when Vance's original Senate term was up. The new senator will serve with Senator Bernie Moreno, who was sworn in with other newly elected senators just after noon on January 3rd. Moreno beat longtime incumbent Senator Sherrod Brown in the November election. Moreno will serve as Ohio's senior senator. The appointee will be the junior senator. I'd like to welcome in longtime Ohio Republican strategist Terry Casey to talk about all of this. Terry, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
Well, first of all, sir, what do you think of Jon Husted as the possible frontrunner for the appointment to Senate?
He seems to be the likely person, and he fits a couple of the key categories the governor had. One is electability. He was twice elected statewide as Secretary of State. He's twice been on the ballot with Mike DeWine being elected as lieutenant governor. So he's got name ID. He's been active in economic development, a lot of the issues all over Ohio, works hard. So in terms of electability, he checks that box. And then secondly, and most important to Mike DeWine, he wants somebody that can be a senator and be effective. And Jon Husted, clearly from being Ohio House Speaker, being a state senator, the other statewide offices, he understands the issues in Ohio and the importance of the different regions, their needs, what's important. And in some ways, coming up in the next 2 years, Ohio might actually have 3 senators when you've got JD Vance as vice president, head of the Senate, and then 2 senators. So having strong senators who are active and aggressive are going to be very important. But clearly, I think the governor, when he says soon, that probably means, as this is airing on Sunday, it's going to be this coming week because they need to get it done before the 20th and to beat DeSantis's appointment of Rubio, who's going to be Secretary of State, so that the new senator from Ohio is maybe 99th in seniority instead of 100th.
So you talked about, Husted on the issues and things, but what else do you think he brings to the table that would make him a good senator?
He's a skilled campaigner. He understands the state of Ohio. I mean, people don't realize, if you sit here in Columbus, we think Columbus is the center of the state, and it's important, but it's only 17% of the media market covering the state. This is a big, diverse state, lots of interest, and the people in Cincinnati and Cleveland, whether it's on sports or other things, think very differently. And then there's Toledo in the Northwest, Southeast, lots of issues, complex state. It takes a lot to get up to speed and understand fully campaigning and representing the state.
How crucial is the selection in the sense of the governor picking the right person for the job?
Well, it's important, and also if he picks John Husted, then he opens up an appointment for lieutenant governor, and that could play into what happens in 26. But clearly you need a strong candidate who can raise money, work hard, campaign, because you got to run potentially in a May of 26 primary and November 26 general. Then you move into 28, and in order to get elected to a full 6-year term, you got to get elected then.
And civics lesson, how does that process work in terms of picking a replacement for lieutenant governor if this all plays out?
Well, if uniquely in the Ohio Constitution, the governor will appoint the new lieutenant governor, but that person must be approved both by the Ohio House and the state Senate. Unlike the other constitutional offices, if there's a vacancy, it's only state Senate approval. So that's a unique bit of trivia most insiders don't realize.
Yeah. Now you said in a sense that Ohio will have 3 senators because vice president breaks ties in the Senate. But in terms of the 2 brand new senators, does that put the state at any kind of disadvantage in the sense that we don't have one that has been there for a while to maybe build those coalitions and to be able to push legislation through?
Well, seniority is definitely important, especially in the Senate, but I think also if you've got fresh new ideas, new ways of looking at things, we really need that, because clearly at some point we can't just keep printing more money and piling up more and more inflation. Somehow we've got to get a handle on the federal government costs and the spending compared to the revenue coming in.
Plus, Republicans now have control of the Senate.
Absolutely, and clearly Ramaswamy is going to be very visible and active, and he might have a statewide interest in 2026. So there's lots
of... That would be for governor.
Absolutely, there's lots of moving parts out there in terms of people and actions and what's going to happen. So
it'll be an interesting 2 years, isn't it?
Well, the good news is for 2025, you'll have a lot to talk about here on Face the State.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about 2025 in terms of your thoughts about the Trump administration. We often hear a lot about, what does the president do in his first 100 days? Trump has been setting up a lot of things already during the transition. So what do you expect in the first 10 days to 100 days?
Well, it's going to be inflation and immigration. That's what they talked about most in the campaign. And again, everything can't be solved on inflation, but I think the biggest focus is going to be on drill, baby, drill. What can we do to open up more energy? And the good news is Ohio is a state with a lot of natural gas. We've got coal, but coal has its problems and challenges. But natural gas is a big thing, and clearly the whole issue of supplying electricity for all of the grid farms that Ohio's getting. The good news is we're at the forefront on technology, but it takes energy and electricity to make it happen.
And Trump during the campaign had said he was going to lower prices and lower inflation, and then later he kind of backed off on that by saying that's a hard thing to do. Was that the right move to kind of lower the bar, the expectations?
Well, clearly Jim Carville summarized the campaign very well, that Democrats forgot about this thing called the economy and inflation. So yes, it's the big focus, but in all honesty, you just can't snap your fingers and roll all the prices back at the grocery store. But it's going to be a focus, but the whole energy, that's the easiest thing to move the needle and get prices lower, because clearly higher gasoline and diesel prices is part of what drove the supply chain, the food supply, caused a lot of the price increases.
So how do you see the role of Vice President-elect, soon to be Vice President Vance in this administration? So many times vice presidents, kind of disappear into the shadows.
Well, I don't think he's going to disappear, because he's obviously going to do some foreign funerals, because that always happens for vice presidents, but I think he's going to be active out there, and including working with the senators, because even though they've got 53 Republican senators, on some bills you're going to need more than that. And so he'll
to get
be
to the 60.
To get to the 60, but expect a budget reconciliation order to come through that'll do some budget things, but we've got a long ways to go, because the federal budget, when you're running roughly $1.8 to $2 trillion a year, that's like somebody in a household only making $75,000 a year but spending $100,000 a year. You might do that for 1 or 2 years, but soon the credit card balance gets too high.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting first 10 to 100 days and 4 years. So Terry, we'll be checking in with you for sure. As the day goes.
It won't be boring.
As the administration goes on.
Fasten your seatbelts, and it won't be boring.
No, it won't be. Terry, thank you very much for your input. I definitely appreciate it. Well, coming up next on Face the State, I'm joined by Ohio House Minority Leader Allison Russo to discuss bills recently signed into law here in the state and her top priorities for the new General Assembly. With the new year, a new Ohio General Assembly is underway. The first day of a new legislature is a day of pomp and circumstance. Representatives and senators were sworn into office last Monday. Democratic and Republican leaders also officially took their posts as elected by their colleagues. As state lawmakers are drafting new legislation, Governor Mike DeWine finished up last year's work by signing the remaining passed bills into law. Just on Wednesday, he signed more than 24 new laws. That includes the controversial House Bill 8, also known as the Parents' Bill of Rights. Under the new law, school officials must notify parents if their child asks to be identified by a different gender. It also requires public schools to tell parents about sexuality content materials they plan to teach, and this will give parents the option to request other instruction.
If you're a parent, you want to be informed what's going on in your child's life. That the parents are the best teachers, they're the first teachers, they're the best teachers, and it's very, very important.
Opponents of the new law say it puts LGBTQ plus students' health and safety at risk by requiring teachers to out them to their parents. The law also requires school districts to allow students to leave campus for religious instruction during the school day. The law goes into effect April 8th. Another new controversial policy signed into law allows police agencies to charge up to $75 per hour for body camera video. The cost caps at $750. Critics of the new law say it will make it harder to hold police accountable and provide transparency to the community. DeWine says this law will remove the, quote, unfunded burdens on these agencies. Another new law is aimed at protecting Ohio children. Surrounded by the family and friends of Braden Marcus, Governor Mike DeWine signed Braden's Law. It makes sextortion a felony in the state. Braden was a student at Olentangy High School who took his own life 3 years ago after becoming a victim of financial sextortion. The new law mandates cell phone companies give parents access to a child's phone within 30 days of a child's death. It also increases penalties of sextortion from a 3rd degree to a 2nd degree felony if a person dies through the act of sextortion, and it makes the crime a 1st degree felony if that person is a minor, elderly, or disabled. Braden's mother spoke to 10 TV's Angela Ann at the bill signing.
3.5 years. The journey for you, where are you in that journey today?
Not quite sure yet. Haven't had time to sit down and think about it. It's just day by day in our house still. So we just get up and keep on going. We got little Miss Ella that we have to keep afloat, and us as a family just keep on trucking. That's all we can do.
One part of the law that was removed before it passed would have added victim compensation. That is something lawmakers tell us is a focus as they begin this new General Assembly. The governor also celebrated the signing of Madeline's Law. The sponsors say it will provide Ohio children and young adults with the right to hear. It mandates that insurance companies cover the cost of hearing aids for thousands of Ohioans under the age of 22 who don't have it today. One of the people in that group that you just saw there is my guest today, House Minority Leader, Allison Russo of Upper Arlington. She was a primary sponsor of the Madeline's Law bill. Leader, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Doug. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Bill was a long time in coming. You've been working on that for like 6 years or so, right? And how did it feel to finally see it become law?
Yeah, well, first of all, we started working, both now Senator Weinstein, Casey Weinstein from the Akron area, and myself, our freshman term. So way back in 2019, we were both approached by families within our individual districts, and we wrote the legislation, introduced it. It's had a long road. Ohio will become the 26th state to require insurance coverage for hearing aids for children and the related services. This is a great example of legislation that does real good for families and will have huge impact, but also originates from the people in our communities and those who need help making progress.
Now, on the other side, in another issue, you did not support the Parents' Bill of Rights that we talked about here just a couple seconds ago. What are your concerns about it now that it's signed into law? Yeah,
well, I think in its original concept, had no issue with the legislation. As it went through the process, there were some very concerning amendments added to it. One was this piece that essentially requires mandatory outing of students who could be in a very vulnerable position. It's very vague in how, counselors, for example, social workers, teachers might navigate that if the child might potentially receive harm if that information is released. And also concerning to me and others was the requirement that school districts do release time for religious instruction in the middle of the day. Prior to this, the law was it was up to the local school districts and local communities to make those decisions that were best for those districts and with parent and local input. This takes that away. It is a one-size-fits-all. It's Columbus telling every community how it should be done, and we oppose that.
The first part of it that you were talking about, but don't parents have the right to know, what's going on in their children's lives?
Absolutely, and by and large, I myself have 3 children in school right now. By and large, lots of information communicated about what is being taught in the classroom, what books are being read, etc. The piece that was concerning to us is if there's a situation where a child might be endangered by the information that is released to the parents, including, for example, they are questioning their sexuality, it is vague in terms of what are the responsibility of those people, counselors, guidance counselors, or social workers, et cetera, in mandating that information be released.
Looking forward now, what is the Democratic caucus's, chief priority heading into this brand new General Assembly?
Yeah, well, I think we are going to continue to be very focused in some of those economic issues and how do we reduce cost for everyday Ohioans. So a lot of the issues that we've been fighting for and working on in this previous General Assembly and frankly for General Assemblies before this, you'll hear us and continue to talk a lot about how do we provide direct relief and reduce property taxes in our communities. That is something that we know what needs to be done. It's getting the political will to make it happen and get that relief to homeowners. Also, you'll hear us talking about reducing costs, for example, of childcare and, making sure that people can afford to have their young ones taken care of well while they're getting back into the workforce.
Now, there's legislation that, of course, was being worked on in the previous General Assembly. That would have to start over now. Are you expecting similar or the same bills basically to be reintroduced?
Yeah, we had a package, and some of it was bipartisan, a package of multiple pieces of legislation, particularly in this reducing property taxes and providing direct relief to homeowners. You'll see us pushing that again and talking about that again, whether it be standalone legislation or perhaps pieces that we work into the upcoming state operating budget.
And one of the big issues, of course, was the legalization of recreational marijuana here. The House and Senate were at odds, didn't come up with any real agreements to put into law coming out of the last General Assembly. Is that still being worked on as we speak, and trying to figure out what those guardrails are?
Well, certainly the new House Speaker, Speaker Huffman, has expressed a desire to change part of the law, pieces of the law that was passed by Ohioans about 18 months ago. I mean, listen, my stance, and not just my stance, there are many Democrats and Republicans who feel this way, is we have to maintain the will of the voters and what the voters passed a year and a half ago, and we want to make sure that the communities that have made the decision to allow growing, processing, dispensing, that they are able to get the economic benefit from making those decisions. It shouldn't be coming back to the state and for the state making the decisions of where that revenue should go. Do I think that there are some guardrails and opportunities, for example, and making sure that minors don't have easy access
like
to the product or the
products,
Delta 8
yeah.
products? Yes, absolutely. You know, I think that there's a lot of common ground that we can find there, and things that we need to address that the law did not address. But if we're talking about wholesale changes and what is available to adults, where the revenue is going and coming back to local communities, we are going to remain opposed to that.
Now, I have to ask you, of course, there's a lot of focus right now on Governor DeWine making a decision on who will replace Senator JD Vance in the Senate. So on the political side of it, there's also the race for governor that people are talking about. Last week, as you know, former Ohio Health Department Director Dr. Amy Acton announced that she is running for governor in 2026 as a Democrat. And Attorney General Dave Yost has said he will be a candidate on the Republican side. You know, as leader, I just have to ask you, are you considering a run for governor? Is that even on your mind at this time?
So listen, it is very early in the election cycle before 2026. I think we're going to see probably a number of candidates step up on both sides, Republicans and Democrats. I anticipate there will be very healthy primaries on both sides. In terms of what my decision is, you know, I don't know what is next yet. I am looking at all potential options. But what I do know is that I am very focused on getting through this General Assembly. We've got a transportation budget coming up in the next few months. We've got a state operating budget, which is the largest policy document in the state in the next 6 months. So I am very focused on the job at hand, and there's a lot of work to be done. And, you know, I'll worry about what's in the future later.
I think you just answered my next question, was that, you know, what are you going to be specifically focused on? But you handled it already. Leader Russo, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing what's coming out of this next General Assembly.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Well, coming up, it will soon enough be time to do our taxes. Maybe you'll get a refund, maybe you'll owe more. Either way, maybe you'll have to pay to file them. Or do you? We'll tell you about some help from the IRS. You have plenty of time, but before we know it, tax season will be upon us. And if you want to file your taxes for free, the IRS may be able to help you out. The Internal Revenue Service's free file tax software is now available. Millions of eligible taxpayers will be able to take advantage of the program by accessing the vendor sites through links at irs.gov. But the program only works for people who made less than $84,000 in adjusted gross income in 2024. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. That is all of our time. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you next Sunday at 11:30. Have a great day.